The Shift is brought to you by SE Healthcare. Welcome to The Shift. I'm Dr. Andrea Coyle. Shifties, welcome back to the next episode of the Shift podcast. I have an amazing guest today. What's interesting is she and I have been talking offline. We're both from Pittsburgh, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But it is my honor and privilege to bring Dr. Renee Thompson onto the Shift podcast. Dr. Renee Thompson, can I call you Renee?
Please, yes. I always like to be introduced as Dr. Renee Thompson. It just kind of gives that level of credibility. But I am Renee. It's so funny because I have one phone. Okay, it's my cell phone. It's the same phone my parents call me on. Okay, so there's a message that's like, "Hi, you've reached Dr. Renee Thompson," and my dad sometimes will leave me a message. Oh, Dr. Renee Thompson. Okay, but yes, I am Renee. Thanks for asking.
Wonderful, Renee. And I'm so glad, just a little background for the Shifties. We met at a conference, and I've known a lot about you, Renee, over the years. You've done such incredible work in a very difficult space. When I interview people for the Shift podcast, I recognize how small our community is. We have a lot of similarities, both worked as nurses in the Pittsburgh area. But, first, Dr. Renee Thompson, I would love for you to tell the Shifties a little bit about your background. I was an adult ICU nurse. So take us back a little bit and tell us how you got to where you are, and then what shifted you into this incredible work that you're doing.
Well, thank you for asking. I always say I've done everything you could do as a nurse. I mean, I was a cardiac step-down unit nurse. I got into home care, so I was a home care nurse. I worked for a managed care company. I did a lot of case management, utilization. I was a quality manager. And then I really missed the practice setting, so I went back to the inpatient side. I wanted to be an educator, but because I didn't have my master's yet, they said, we have these great unit director positions available. So I became a unit director. And let's just say I lasted 14 months and then went to neuro step down. I took a step down from that role, and worked neuro for a while, became an educator, and then I ended up in a corporate role responsible for professional development of about 10,000 nurses. And this shift happened. I remember the moment that it happened. I was doing a lot of focus groups. I was building nurse residency programs and preceptor programs and all of that good stuff. And I realized all the nurses, that's all they wanted to talk about was how badly they were treated by the other nurses. And in this moment, I realized that, oh my gosh, it didn't matter where I worked, what role I had, even at the corporate level. Andrea, I swear there was always somebody trying to make it their mission to make my life difficult. And I thought, working in healthcare is hard enough without your coworkers making it harder. And we've been talking about bullying and incivility for a century, but what are we doing about it? So in that moment, I made a shift. I said, that's it. Enough is enough. I'm going to do something about it. And I ended up quitting a job that I loved to start this company with the intent to eradicate bullying and incivility in healthcare. So it was a major shift, major.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. And I just want to relate to exactly what you said. I had a similar, I guess I might call it an epiphany. I'm not sure. I had this moment where I recognized that I was feeling the signs and symptoms of burnout.
Mm.
And, prior to that role, I was a professional excellence director, all things magnet, which to your point, I love that role, but I was experiencing burnout and I was stuck in this hamster wheel. And I really dove into burnout. And what's interesting, Renee, is now what I'm finding is people don't like to call it burnout.
Nope.
And so I am going to put something on LinkedIn. I'm going to start asking people, then what do you like to call it? What feels good? I will tell you, I like to name it, claim it, and tame it.
Ooh.
It is burnout. The World Health Organization calls it burnout. Becker's calls it burnout. All the literature you read pretty much on the daily calls it burnout. But I also want to be sensitive to some folks that don't like the negative connotation. I tee that all up, Renee, to ask you, have you had that same experience when you talk about bullying? Has that been a challenge with some folks finding it not the best word.
Yes. It's I'm laughing a little bit, but it's not funny. It's just sometimes I have to laugh at things because if I don't, I will implode, okay? But and this was more early on. So I've had this company for 14 years. So 14 years I've been doing this work. Early on, when I would be asked by an organization to present to their people, okay, their leaders, their staff, either in a workshop, a keynote, sometimes the executive leaders and sometimes HR would say, we don't want you to use the word bullying. And I just remember thinking, okay, where's this coming from? And the more and more people who would say that to me, I really started to get a sense of why. The reason is because people call all bad behavior bullying. They're not really clear on what bullying is and what it's not. And so we don't like to use the word bullying because for some people, a lot of, I'll just give you an example. I had, actually, she was a PCT, a nursing assistant, who reached out and she said, my boss is bullying me. And I said, okay, what did your boss do? My boss wrote me up. Okay, what did your boss write you up for? For calling off. All right, how many times did you call off? 57 times. Okay, they'll say that that's bullying and it's not. So HR is getting flooded with complaints of bullying when it's not bullying, it's something else. So I think part of it comes from the confusion on what bullying is, what it's not. And then a lot of it too comes from this fear of, oh, if we talk about bullying, that's going to open up the door for a lot of people claiming that they're being bullied. So it just goes back to clarity.
Such a good point. And I'll tell you, I'm glad you mentioned all this. I'm working on where can I find that sweet spot for burnout? Because I think we all can agree in healthcare that burnout is real. However, if we continue to call it this crisis and put other negative words along with burnout, I can understand why some people are challenged or struggling with that type of piece of burnout.
Mhm.
My mission is to create awareness and how do we manage it and what is it and what is it not, just exactly to your
Yeah.
point.
Yes, because, okay, they don't like the word burnout, but they don't like resilience either.
Right.
Like, okay, well, then what word is okay with you? Okay. And I think we try really hard to be sensitive, to not offend people, to accommodate people. And again, I always try to unpack like, what's the psychology behind all of this? I think sometimes it's the opposite of toxic positivity. Okay. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it actually is in alignment with toxic positivity where we don't want to use any of those negative words. Okay. But to your point, there is a definition for it. There are other organizations using the word burnout, and we need to call it what it is, just like bullying. We need to call it what it is. But the key then is like, what are we going to do about it? And so it's not so
Exactly.
much the terminology, it's getting clear on really what the definition is, what it is, but then taking action. That's, I don't know, what do you think? I think that's the missing piece. People don't think that there's anything they can do about it. So why call it or talk about it?
But because it is such a big issue to tackle. If you think about bullying and incivility and burnout, those are huge, huge issues in an organization that require people to roll up their sleeves, and it's tough stuff. There's no other way to say it is tough stuff. I think for the shifties though, Renee, can I'm curious, I'm going to lean in. Can you really go over the definition of bullying and then incivility?
I would be happy to. Okay. For a behavior to be considered bullying, there has to be three things. There has to be a target. Let's say you and I work together and there's just something about you that I don't like. You and your blonde hair and you're always dressed so nicely and so I target you. I give you, if for staff nurses, I give you the worst assignment when I'm in charge. I nitpick you to death, when you're giving me report. I'm fine with everyone else. It's just you that I treat in a way that's incredibly disruptive. So there has to be a target. The behavior has to be harmful in some way. And what we usually do is we look at, is there harm to a patient? So if I withhold information from you, or if I um, give you the silent treatment, refuse to help you, especially when it comes to a patient, that potentially puts a patient at risk. And then it can't just be one time. I get sort of testy with you in a crisis situation. It has to be repeated over time. So I'm using examples, sort of staff nurse to staff nurse, but that is still true leader to leader, physician, like the whole interprofessional team, because I'm going to tell you, I've seen a lot of, we'll just call it disruptive behaviors for now, between the leadership team. So bullying, target, harmful, repeated. Incivility, it's more of that low level, inconsiderate, rude behaviors. This is, I help the people I like, I don't help the people I don't like. This is where you see eye rolling and gossip. If you've ever heard yourself say, I feel like I'm in middle school or high school again, it tends to be incivility, although we know bullying happens in, primary school. However, it's incivility is like ubiquitous. There's no target, harmful, repeated. It's just, that's just the way it is here. Incivility is really culture. And good news and bad news. Good news is if you actually can identify that somebody's bullying someone else, you have policies about that. That's
Right.
easy, kind of easy. Incivility is not easy because that's culture. And, the culture you have right now, it took a long time to get that culture and it's not going to change overnight.
100%. So I was listening to what you're saying and I was thinking about this. Do you think, I'm going back into my old ICU days, and do you think sometimes the bullying or incivility can contribute to burnout?
Absolutely. I cannot tell you how many nurses I've talked to, okay, where they take a look at the schedule and they see who they're working with, especially if it's a newer nurse, especially on the night shift, they will call off rather than come in and work with who they claim to be the bully. And if you're dealing with someone who is treating you rudely, condescending, criticizing you in front of other people, making you feel stupid. When you have to work with that person, you're not focusing on your patients. You're not focusing on your work. You're focusing on avoiding the bully. And think about the emotional, physical, mental stress that all leads to burnout.
And as you know, exhaustion is one of the three cardinal symptoms of burnout, and you exhaust yourself in those 12 hours trying to avoid that person or not have to interact with that person. And you get that visceral response when you clock in at whether you're clocking in or not, doesn't matter. I mean, I think these are really important discussions, Renee.
They are. And I can remember being a staff nurse, looking over the shoulder of the charge nurse as she was making assignments, praying that I would not have to give report to Kathy. Okay. Because Kathy, I knew she was going to drill me like a drill sergeant. So when I saw, oh gosh, I have to give report to Kathy, everything, like talk about a visceral reaction, I'd get a surge of hydrochloric acid in my stomach. I'd lose my peripheral vision for a moment. And then I ran around trying to make sure I knew every single thing about my patients. That was more important to me to avoid her wrath than actually taking care of my patients. So imagine, and you said it, the exhaustion that I felt ending that shift,
Yeah.
especially after giving her a report, because she always found something that I didn't know, something like she challenged me all the time. Now, there's a difference in challenging someone to help them to become a better nurse and that mentoring. I'm going to help you. And the whole like squashing someone, trying to make them feel stupid. There's a
And
difference.
trying to make you feel stupid. I think, yes. And I think that's one thing that I have experienced in my career, and I've heard people chatter about that. But those are the things that make people want to leave the profession.
Oh yeah. And I almost left the profession 2 weeks after I started because of my preceptor. my preceptor, and it's a whole story. So if you have another hour, I could tell you. But just so you know, something happened. There was an incident. My preceptor blamed me, and I, just okay. It was my fault. And she actually said to me, "You better think about whether or not you have what it takes to be a nurse, because I'm going to tell you right now, you don't." So I went home and I told my husband, I said, "I'm quitting. I'm quitting. I can't do this. I'm going to kill someone." And if it weren't for my manager calling me the next day, so this was a Friday evening shift, I was off the weekend. My manager called. Not, what did I think? I thought she was calling to fire me.
Right.
I'll never forget the words she said to me. She said, "Renee, I know what happened. It's not your fault. You're a good nurse. You come back in Monday. I'm giving you a new preceptor." I got goosebumps thinking about it because I would have quit if it weren't for my manager calling me.
So let me ask you this. This brings a really good thought. Instead of addressing the behavior of the preceptor, do we just shuffle these people around sometimes?
Oh, always. Well, we shuffle employees around who are really good at what they do, but they're toxic. So, okay, this is an employee in my department, and she's expressed interest in an ICU or whatever. So I'm going to encourage a transfer to another department instead of addressing that person's behavior in my department. It is always easier just to kind of pass the buck. Your problem now, not my monkey now, you know how they say.
Hmm.
Instead, it takes more courage and it actually takes skills. Like there are skills that you can develop to be able to confront these people, especially if you're in a leadership role, even if they're your most clinically competent employee, because it's not just nurses, it's all of us. And we need to do a better job equipping people with the knowledge, skills, tools, and confidence to be able to address the issues in their department and not just pass the buck to someone else.
I always talk about FBI, feelings, behavior, impact.
Yes.
And truly, those are the skill sets it takes to, number one, be courageous, and then describe the feelings, behavior, impact of someone's behavior. And as I've seen it multiple times in my 31-year career, people would rather just, sweep it under the carpet because it's difficult. But
Oh,
often, if someone cares about you, they're going to say, you know what? I recognize this and I want you to be your best. And hopefully, the person receiving that feedback will take it as a gift and make improvements. It doesn't always happen. And you know that, Renee. But really, I think one thing that's critically important in our profession is how we address those behaviors.
100%. And I always say, we have confronting techniques: name it, speak it, script it. The speak it is we have to start having honest and respectful conversations with each other. So let's say you're in a leadership role and you have a nurse who's very toxic but clinically competent. It's being honest, pulling them. Don't, first of all, don't assume anybody's ever had an honest conversation with them, because we usually don't say anything because it's so uncomfortable, but we talk about them and we do workarounds. Okay, everybody knows that. Well, instead, bringing them into the office and basically say, "You're our most clinically competent nurse. Your behavior, how you treat people, is not okay." And then get specific, give examples. And starting today, I'm no longer willing to tolerate this from you. What are you going to do to make sure you step up? And so you have an honest and respectful conversation with them. Don't assume that they already know. And then I always say one of two things are going to happen. They're either going to, as you said, step up. Sometimes like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea people thought of me that way. I don't want people to think this. I'll do better." Great. Help them, coach them, all the good stuff. They're either going to step up, do the right thing, or they're going to step out. Either they're going to step out on their own or you're going to step them out, because we can no longer afford to tolerate any disruptive behaviors in healthcare. Because what happens is you think, "I can't lose this person," but you're losing more people because of that person. And so now one conversation does not change somebody's behavior. If you give the honest conversation, independent of how they respond, you need to meet with them again and again, and to a point where you either see that they're making an attempt, they're improving, or they're not. And then you do the whole step up, step out.
Very well said. I have a question. You and I were talking about your book. And
Oh.
I really want to share
Yeah.
with the shifties.
Hmm.
Can you talk about the one chapter that you started to tell me about? But don't give it away because obviously we do want people to get the book.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, if you could just talk a little bit about your book and some of the shifts that you hope will come after people read the book.
Yes, thank you for asking. So I always tell people chapter one will tell you everything about me and why I do this work. And in chapter one, it's my story of how I became this unit leader and I had a toxic department, had no idea how to address their behaviors. And so I ended up quitting and I felt like a failure. And then I got older and wiser and realized I wasn't a failure. I just wasn't equipped. Nobody taught me how to confront, these behaviors. And so part of the reason that I do this work is because I never want another leader to feel like a failure like I did. So I talk about that, but what is important to me and what I'm well known for are practical strategies that are easy to implement. So I'll give you an example of what's not a practical strategy. I had a leader of this organization reach out and they said, we need help to address disruptive behaviors. We're losing people because of bullying. I'm like, okay, I'll help you. And it didn't work out. They said, no, we're going to do it on our own. And what happened was their executive brought all the leaders together and said, all right, people, we're losing a lot of people to bullying here. You need to go back and start confronting and holding your people accountable. Now go do that. 2 years later, they hired me to come in and help them do that. You can't just say confront people. You can't just say you need to hold people accountable if you're not going to teach them how to do that.
Mhm.
Like, what do you say? What words do you use? And that's one of our superpowers is the scripting. Say these words to this person when they're acting in this way. There are a lot of like key human behavioral principles because I'm a human behavioral psychology nut. I'm reading psychology books all the time. So in this book, there's a roadmap on how you start addressing disruptive behavior so that you can cultivate a healthy, professional, respectful work culture. I will say that this is the second edition of the original book, same title. And it was this past year that I'm like, it's been since 2019 that I wrote a book. It's time for me to write another one. And I thought, all right, am I going to write a new book? And I just kept going back to the original Enough book. And that book has been so popular, so many simple, practical, easy to implement strategies that I thought, but it was written pre-COVID.
Mm.
Why don't I just take that one and update it? So I've added a bonus chapter. I've updated a lot of the studies that are in there. I've added a ton more practical tips. I have these little carve out boxes where other leaders share the ways that they have addressed disruptive behaviors. And so it's probably um, the proudest, like I'm very proud of this work. And so, yeah, it's enough. Eradicate bullying and incivility in healthcare strategies for frontline leaders. And you can get it on my website or you can get it on Amazon.
That was going to be my next question. So
Yeah.
where can people get the book?
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I'm just so honored to sit here and interview you because I think you have an amazing story. If you could share with the Shifties, because now you're an original Shifty, and as you know, Dr. Deb Zimmerman was the original Shifty, and we
Yeah.
talked about Deb before, before we even recorded this, just how much we admire and adore Deb, and she really is a master Shifty. You're a master Shifty. If you had two lessons that you wanted the Shifties, or two lessons learned or words of wisdom, what would they be?
So one of them is we have to stop using silence as a strategy because
Ooh,
it
I
does
like
not
that.
work. Okay. And I actually have this talk that I'm working on that hopefully I'll have it ready to share with people. But in any true bullying or even incivility situation, there are three people. There's the bully, there's the target, but there's the witness. And many of us witness bad behavior. Even though we're not experiencing it, we witness it. So my message is if you're the witness, say something to someone. You can say something like you can intervene right then and there. Hey, time out. The way you're treating Amy is not okay. But for some of us, like we can't even imagine doing that. Like, oh my God, visceral reaction, right? Well, then maybe it's just you text Amy later and say, hey, I saw what Tina did. I heard that. Not okay. Are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? So say something to the person or report it to your manager, report it to someone. But we have to stop using silence as a strategy. So that would be my number one. Number two, turn the mirror back on yourself. Can't be everybody else. How do you show up to work? Are you the one at times helping the people you like and not the people you don't like? Are you excluding some people? Are you eye rolling? Are you gossiping? Again, until we can all turn the mirror back on ourselves to take a look at how we show up every day, we are never going to solve this problem. It starts with each one of us.
Wow. Renee, I actually am going to use silence is not the strategy.
Doesn't work.
I love it. Well, Renee, thank you so much for now being an official shifty. I'd love to have you come back in like 6 months, have you back on the podcast. I want to thank you for your great work and thank you for your leadership.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me. I always get excited when I get an opportunity to talk about this issue because, again, we've at least raised awareness. People recognize that bullying and incivility are a problem, but now it's okay, it's a problem. What are we going to do about it? So hoping more and more people take action. So yeah, would love people to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn, my website, healthyworkforceinstitute.com. We have a ton of resources there. And again, thank you so much for inviting me.
You bet. And shifties, remember, your shift makes a difference. Keep shifting. Enjoying the shift? Help us reach more nurse leaders by rating and reviewing us on your podcast app. It takes just a minute, but makes a big impact. Search for The Shift, tap those stars, and share what you love. Your feedback shapes our future episodes and helps others discover us. Remember, rate, review, and amplify the shift today.